name's Shannon Nielsen. If you are new here this morning, thanks for taking the risk. Thanks for walking into an unfamiliar place, sitting next to strange people who hopefully smell good, but seem a little bit weird. Thanks for just taking the chance and maybe hoping that maybe we could become your new family. And that is really our hope for you if you're here with us this morning. Keep on taking a chance. Stick around after the service, have a donut, get to know some people. We'll see where God takes it. So this morning we're continuing our series in Matthew 8-9 called Extraordinary Authority. And we're looking at the authority that Jesus has over demons and diseases and death and nature and sin and ultimately over us. And we're seeing how he uses that authority, that he uses it with extraordinary gentleness and compassion. That he isn't just some jerk with a big club, but that he is loving and he is tender and he is kind and he shows his compassion to all different sorts of people. So throughout we've seen him deal with lepers, we've seen him deal with servants, we've seen him deal with all sorts of people that society would say, I don't really have a use for you. You're not as important as other people around us. But Jesus loves them and he goes after them. Alright, so we're continuing the series. We'll meet a few new characters this morning, but I want to start off with a question. Simple question. Have you ever heard two completely different versions of the same story? Alright, think about that for a second. Have you ever heard two completely different versions of the same story? Maybe it's from your best friend. And he told you the real inside scoop. He told you the real version of the story. But you also heard him tell a similar story that seemed to leave out some incriminating details when he was recounting that story, when his parents or his little sister were around. It was the same story, a lot of the same facts, but a lot of differences too. Or maybe you have maybe you have kids. All of you have parents, I hope. My parents, one of them still alive. Or maybe you have kids. And if you have kids, you often hear two very different versions of the same story. So I've got a 9-year-old boy named Luke, I've got a 7-year-old girl named Chloe, and it seems like every day during the summer they come running into the room and they have two completely different versions of the story. So Luke's story, it might go something like this. He comes in and he says, I was just minding my own business, Dad. I didn't do anything at all. I was just shooting baskets. You know how my goal for this week is to make 500 baskets, and I really want to work on my basketball skills, and I'm just doing this, and I'm working on this, and Chloe comes along, and she just starts crying. And I didn't do anything, but she started crying, and now she's saying it's my fault, and I didn't do anything. And he's starting to tear up because he's afraid that he's getting in trouble, probably because deep down he knows that there is something that he did that he probably shouldn't have done or should have done that he didn't do, and it might come out in the open, but he genuinely believes that he's innocent, or at least mostly innocent. And then Chloe comes along, different version, same series of events. It just happened, but Luke's a little bit faster, so he rushes into the room first, and then Chloe comes in. She's heard the tail end of Luke's story, and she was already crying, and Chloe's got this thing where when she's upset, she gets these really deep lines right here, premature wrinkle lines. I look at her, I'm like, Chloe, you're such a beautiful girl, but I'm scared for you. You don't want to do this wrinkling thing this early. Look at your genetics. It's not going to work out for you. But she's huffing and she's puffing, and she can barely talk. She can't talk at all often, but she'll stutter and she'll try to get it out. She'll say, we were going to play together, and I wanted to play Battleship, and Luke wanted to play Frisbee, and so I said I'd play Frisbee, and I tried to play Frisbee, but I'm not any good with throwing a Frisbee, and I tried, and I did my best, but Luke, he said he didn't want to play with me anymore, and now he's playing basketball, and he won't let me play with him. And we're supposed to be playing Battleship, and he says he never said that he played Battleship. And she's just distraught. And now Luke's getting really nervous, so Luke's kind of ramping up his destruction. Alright, because he sees that Chloe, she can play that, crying little girl card, and she gets results from Daddy. So maybe Luke, can, I don't know, the 9-year-old boy card doesn't work as well. But it's the same story. Same series of events. Very different details because it's told from two completely different perspectives, two completely different point of view. And so each of them, they're not necessarily trying to lie to me. Maybe they're deceiving a little bit. Maybe they know it, maybe they don't. But they include different details because they're trying to drive me to a completely different conclusion. There is a different purpose in the story that they're telling. So in each of their stories, there's a different hero, there's a different villain, because they want to drive me to a different conclusion. All out of one story. And when we read through the Gospels, there is a similar dynamic. Alright, it's not as extreme. It's not that one of the gospel writers got caught, so he's just going to try to tell a lie to get out of it or something like that. It's not as extreme as with my kids. But what we see is that the gospel writers, they're using a lot of the same source material. They're recounting a lot of the same stories, and a lot of these gospel writers, they were both there. They experienced these stories. There's different things that they remember, and they experienced so many other stories. But they choose the particular stories that they want to tell and give emphasis to particular things because each gospel writer has a different purpose. Now, there's a lot of unity in their purpose. Every gospel has the same hero. All right, Jesus is the hero of the story. And every gospel agrees that Jesus is fully God and fully man. That he's the promised Messiah. That he has come to save us from our sins. They agree that he's powerful. They agree that he's compassionate. They agree on all sorts of things. But they emphasize very different things. So like the Gospel of Matthew was written to a bunch of Jews. It was written to people who know the Old Testament, who know the background, who know the prophecies. So the whole point is to convince these people who knew the Old Testament that this is the promised king. This is the king that you've been waiting for, that you've been looking for. He is here. Come embrace your king. Come follow your king. On the other end of the spectrum, we have the Gospel of John. John is written to people who know nothing about the Old Testament, who care nothing about the Old Testament. It's written to the Greco-Roman world who were far from God. It's written to natural skeptics. So you see him writing a gospel that appeals better than any of the gospels in that secular Western culture, because it's written to that sort of person. You get to the end of the Gospel of John and you meet Thomas. And Jesus has already been raised from the dead. All of his buddies have seen him. Thomas hasn't seen him yet. They're falling on their faces, praising God that Jesus has been raised from the dead. And Thomas, he missed Jesus when he didn't see Jesus in that moment, but he gets together with all these guys and he says, you know what, I don't believe it. I don't buy it. You guys are raving about all this stuff. I know we walked around with Jesus for 3-4 years of our lives, but I don't believe it. Unless I can put my hand in the hole in his hand, unless I can put my hand in his side, I'm not going to believe it. So we meet doubting Thomas. We meet a skeptic, because it's written to skeptics. We meet a guy like Peter who is messed up royally and who's being restored at the end of the gospel, because it's written to people who haven't been trying to be religious, who haven't been trying to please God, who haven't been trying to chase after him, who look at their lives in light of Jesus and say, man, I've messed up royally. But it's written to compel them and invite them and bring them in. So each of the gospel writers uses a lot of the same stories, the same exact source material, the same person that they're writing about and they're trying to reveal to us. But they use very different emphases. All right? Because each gospel writer has a very different point that they're trying to make. So over the past few weeks, I have been really looking forward to the story that we're hitting today. Because in this progression of all the stories that we're looking at, this is an amazing story. It is a compelling story. There's all sorts of drama. It is ripping. We meet this powerful man and his daughter is dying, and we meet this outcast woman that's on the other end of the spectrum, and she's got desperate needs of her own. And we progress through the story, and we feel what the father is feeling. We feel the impatience. We feel the anxiety. We get the insecurity and the fear that the woman is feeling. There's all sorts of drama. There's all sorts of detail. It is an emotionally compelling story. And then I actually read ahead and I started working on my sermon, and I read through Matthew's version of the story, and I'm like, oh, this story stinks. I'm like, what in the world? I thought this was going to be good. And then I turned, no, it's Mark's version of the story. It's Luke's version of the story that I like. Because they bring in all of these amazing details. They make you feel what the characters are feeling in the story. And I get to Matthew's version of the story, and it's written like a math book. He's skipping over. I know some of you guys love math, but the general person in the audience, as compelling and passionate as a math book, doesn't do anything for you. And I get to Matthew's version of the story. It's like the Cliff Notes version. It's just this outline. He's hitting these key points, but he's not drawing it into the story. I'm like, oh, come on. This was going to be a great story. All right? And so I come to it, and I'm sitting there thinking, Matthew, what are you doing? Man, you were nailing it a few chapters ago. You've been nailing it every story. I've been loving this. When I get to this one, I'm like, you really let me down, Matthew. And so were you less inspired today? You know, what happened here? And I don't believe that's true. I don't believe that Matthew hadn't had enough coffee, or that he wasn't, leaning into the Holy Spirit hard enough. But there is some reason that Matthew took all of these rich and compelling details and he stripped them out of the story, and he just left us with a skeleton. And I was wrestling with it, and I was looking at it, and I was comparing the different stories, and I was comparing the context, and I realized that Matthew tells the story completely differently than Luke. Because Matthew is making a completely different point. All right? He pulled out some of these gripping details because he felt like they were a distraction from the point that he wanted to make. All right, so this morning, I want to look at both versions of the story. We could look at it in Mark as well. We're going to look at the Luke version. We're going to look at the Matthew version. We're going to do that because I want you to feel the story. I want you to feel what Luke wanted you to feel. But I also want you to see what Matthew wanted you to see. I want you to see the stripped-down outline that drives home the point that Matthew is trying to make. And I want us to be challenged to respond as Matthew is inviting his readers to respond. All right, so let's dive in. We're going to start in Luke this time. Luke chapter 8, verse 40. Now when Jesus returned, a crowd welcomed him, for they were all expecting him. Then a man named Jairus, a ruler of the synagogue, came and he fell at Jesus' feet, pleading with him to come to his house, because his only daughter, a girl about 12, was dying. So we meet this guy Jairus, and he's a good man. He's a godly man. He is a ruler in the synagogue. He leads other people in worship. But as godly as he is, as much as he's a spiritual leader, he's also a man with status and prestige and probably with wealth. So all of the Jews who are paying attention to the story, this is one of the last people that they're going to expect to come and fall on his face in front of Jesus. They'd expect this man to come and to speak to Jesus, to tell Jesus, this is what you need to do, because I'm in charge, I have power, I have authority, I have prestige, I have wealth. Follow me, do what I want you to do. But instead he falls on his face before Jesus. Because just like the centurion we met a few weeks ago, this guy has a certain amount of power, a certain amount of authority. But when he comes face to face with death and disease, he's got nothing to offer. And so we see him appealing to a higher authority. So we see him falling on his face, and a hush falls over the crowd, and Jairus approaches Jesus with a desperate, humble faith. Because his only daughter, his pride and joy, the little girl that he rocked at night, that he held at night, the baby girl that he chased around the backyard, the girl who is growing, the girl who is approaching the age of 12, which in that culture would be an age where you transition into adulthood. It would be like graduation for us, turning 18, turning 21, graduating from college. His baby girl is growing up, and she's just getting to the age that she's about to get married. He can walk her down the aisle, and he's been living for this woman. And now his baby girl is dying. And he's got nothing that he can do except fall on his face and beg Jesus to help. And Jesus says yes. But as Jesus was on his way, the crowds almost crushed him. The people were everywhere. The people were pressing in because they had heard about Jesus. They heard the rumors and they wanted to see him face to face. They wanted to experience Jesus firsthand, so they're pressing against him. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, and no one could heal her. So first we meet this synagogue ruler, this prestigious man, this man who's got everything, this man who is spiritual, who is godly, who is accepted. And he has this 12-year-old girl who has been healthy, and who has been wonderful, and who's been the joy of his life, that now after 12 years of health is finally sick. And then we see that juxtaposed with the exact opposite person, the outcast, the woman, the person who is sick. Not the person who is leading in worship, but the person who has such a disease and a sickness that she is considered unclean, and she is not even welcome to participate in worship. Well, Jairus has been enjoying 12 years of health with his beautiful baby girl. This woman has been suffering in sickness as an outcast for 12 years. Completely opposite end of the spectrum. But what we're going to see is that both of them are falling at Jesus' feet with a desperate, humble faith. Some of you guys know Stephen and Carrie Jo Shepherd. Hopefully we have a picture of them, if you know. These guys are missionaries in Nigeria. Stephen is an OB-GYN, all right? Medical missionary over there, specializing in helping with women's issues. And he is in a culture where many C-sections and other procedures like that are desperately needed, but there are not doctors available to perform them. All right, so in the absence of that, there are a lot of women who die in the process of childbirth, and there are a lot of babies who die in the process of childbirth. And sometimes the baby dies, the woman survives, but the baby has been pressed awkwardly up against the wall between her bladder and her vagina for so long and so awkwardly, and maybe the baby has stayed in there and is beginning to decay. in such a way that that wall between those two areas of her body is compromised. It's killed. The blood flow is cut off, and it begins to decay, it begins to rot, and there's an opening between those two chambers. One of the most common things that Stephen does is he fixes what are called VVFs, vesicovaginal fistulas, these holes between these two areas. All right? And he's fixing those things because for these women that have this medical condition, their urine is passing through another chamber. Blood is moving back and forth. They are rotting from the inside out. And so, for an indefinite period of time, maybe for all of their lives, for the time since they tried to have this baby and things did not work out, they have an issue of blood, or at the very least an issue of urine. All right? And they smell bad, and they are outcast. And often their husbands abandon them because their bodies cannot do what they were made to do. All right? And their husbands often just see them as a tool. You can't do what you were made to do. You can't do that. In addition, you smell bad. You know what? I'm just going to put you over here. We are going to put you to the outside edge of the village. Read stories about, in certain countries in Africa, taking these women, putting them in a hut on the outside edge of the village and saying, you know what? We're abandoning you. We're not going to have anything to do with you. We're going to wait until the dogs come and get you and take care of our problem, which is you. That's the sort of woman that we are meeting in this story. That's the sort of woman that Stephen and Carrie Jo, they've moved to Africa to help. Both to help them physically and then ultimately to share the gospel. All right, we see Jesus coming and intervening and doing the exact same thing, not through the miracles of modern medicine, but through the supernatural power of God. All right, but he is coming to this woman who is absolutely outcast, who has a stench that follows her everywhere that she goes. A life that is full of disease and decay, embarrassment and shame. All right? We get a little bit more insight in the Gospel of Mark about this woman's life. Mark 5:26 says, she had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and spent all she had, and yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. So she had this intensely personal, embarrassing, vulnerable disease. She'd gone to doctors, she spent everything, they did nothing for her, they made her worse. She didn't have a good doctor. And she'd gotten to the place in her life where she was absolutely on the fringe of society as an outcast. And she had no rational, tangible reason to hope that her life would be any different. But we meet this woman who believed that Jesus had the power to change her life. Despite everything she'd experienced for 12 years, 12 years of suffering, she still hears about Jesus and she believes that this man Jesus can change her life. So she came up behind him and she touched the edge of his cloak. She's still too scared to look him in the eyes. She's terrified, she's intimidated, she's outcast. She would not look at anyone in the eyes. She would not approach anyone from the front. But she sneaks through the crowd, she reaches up, and she just flicks the hem of his sleeve. Believing in her heart that if I can just touch him, I will be made whole. That this man is so powerful, that he is so filled with the power of God, that if I can just get close, if I can touch him, my life will be changed forever. And immediately, her bleeding stopped. She was healed, she was changed, and she walked away. She tried to slip back into the crowd. Nobody noticed, I'm going to get away with this, and I'm completely restored. I can't believe this, and nobody even needed to know about my shame. And then the question comes, who touched me, Jesus asked. When they all denied it, Peter said, Master, the people are crowding and pressing against you. Everyone touched you. What kind of question is that? Who touched you? Everyone touched you. But Jesus says, someone touched me. I know that power has gone out from me. Then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet. She's scared to death because she thought that she'd gotten away with it. And now she realized she'd been caught. She realized that the one thing that she didn't want to ever have anybody know about, that she didn't want to talk about, they kind of knew because there was a smell, she'd been outcast, but strangers don't know. She doesn't want to tell anybody about this, but the one thing that she doesn't want to tell, she's going to have to tell. It's going to come out in the open, and what is Jesus going to do to her? She came trembling, she fell at his feet. And she found out that Jesus didn't just want to heal her, he wanted to free her. So in the presence of all of these people, she told why she had touched him. She told how she had instantly been healed. And then Jesus said to her, Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace. Can you imagine what she felt in that moment? When Jesus called her daughter? There's another character in the story that's a daughter. She's a 12-year-old proud and joy. She's an upper middle class. She is beautiful. She's wonderful. Everybody loves the little girl. Nobody calls this woman daughter. Nobody accepts this woman into their family. But he encouraged her to go in peace, which is amazing for her. But what about Jairus? What about his daughter? What about his peace? Because the broader story seems to be about a different daughter. It's about Jairus' daughter, not some outcast, not some sickly old woman who smells like the urinals at a gas station. I don't care about her, I care about my daughter. And Jesus, what about my daughter? At the beginning of the story, we find out that his daughter is dying. Every moment counts, every second counts. Jesus, why are you stopping to care for her? What about my daughter? But there's this delay. There's this waiting. Because for Jesus, he looks at this outcast woman and he sees a daughter. So Jesus interrupts his mission to save Jairus' daughter to care for a daughter of God. Because one of the things that we continue to see in the stories of Jesus is that he has this completely indiscriminate compassion. He has compassion for everyone, for all kinds of people. So while everyone else in the world was looking down on this woman as an outcast, Jesus came to her with compassion and welcomed her into the family. Not because she was beautiful or intelligent or charming or even because she was godly, but because she had faith. Because she came to him with a desperate, humble faith. So while Jesus is loving on this outcast who he saw as a daughter, look what happened to Jairus' baby girl. Verse 49. While Jesus was still speaking, someone came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue ruler. Your daughter is dead, he said. Don't bother the teacher anymore. And hearing this, Jesus, he grabs this guy by the shoulders, he looks him in the eye, and here's what he says. Don't be afraid. Just believe, and she will be healed. When he arrived at the house of Jairus, he did not let anyone go with him except Peter, John, and James, and the child's father and mother. Meanwhile, all the people were wailing and mourning for her, because his precious little 12-year-old girl is dead. Of course they're wailing. It's what we do when a child dies. When grandma dies and she's 80-something, some of us weep and mourn and wail. Some of us say, she's old. I was kind of expecting it coming. When a child dies, everybody weeps and mourns and wails. It's what we do. It is desperate. It is wrong. It's where we see more clearly than in the situation with grandma. We see that in most situations, God didn't design us for death, and it is painful, and it is devastating, and they are broken. And Jesus walks in. He raises his voice. He says, stop wailing. Wailing, whatever. I pronounce it with an H. It's a problem of mine. Jesus says she's not dead, but asleep. And they laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. But he took her by the hand and he said, my child, get up. She gasped for air and her spirit returned, and at once she stood up. Then Jesus told them to give her something to eat. Her parents were astonished. But he ordered them not to tell anyone what had happened. So Luke tells this amazing story, and it is overflowing with power, it's overflowing with emotion, it's overflowing with compassionate love. It's a story about justice and equality and unconditional love. We're seeing this beautiful baby girl that everyone loves. We're seeing this outcast woman that nobody loves, and both of them come and respond to Jesus in desperate, humble faith, and both of them are completely changed, and it's this amazing story. So now I just want to read through Matthew's story, and I want to see if you felt what I felt. Let's see what we're missing. Matthew 9:18. While Jesus was saying this, a ruler came and knelt before him and said, my daughter has just died. But come, put your hand on her and she will live. Jesus got up and went with him, and so did his disciples. Just then a woman who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak. She said to herself, if I only touch his cloak, I will be healed. Jesus turned to her and said, take heart, daughter. Your faith has healed you. And the woman was healed from that moment. When Jesus entered the ruler's house and saw the flute players and the noisy crowd, he said, go away. The girl is not dead but asleep. But they laughed at him. After the crowd had been put outside, he went and he took the girl by the hand, and she got up. news of this spread through all the region. Do you feel what I felt? Do you read Luke's gripping drama and then read Matthew's, kind of bullet point cliff notes and say, Matthew, such a missed opportunity. Many more people would have trusted Jesus if you would have included the details, if you would have done some tear-jerking here, if you would have drawn me into the story a little bit. What are you doing, Matthew? Why did you leave out these rich details? Why did you leave out the compassion? Why did you leave out the drama? Because for Matthew, every one of those beautiful details was a distraction from the single point that he was trying to drive home. So I want to think about that for a minute and figure out what that point is that Matthew's trying to make. So in Matthew 8:9, we've already seen Jesus reach out and touch a leper. He said, you know what? I'm going to make myself unclean so that you can be clean. We've seen him heal the sick. We've seen him cast out demons. Now we're seeing him raise the dead. We've seen him calm the storm. Most of all, last week we saw his power over sin. Last couple of weeks we saw his power over sin. He had power not just to forgive sin, but to break the power of sin, to restore us, to make us whole, to change us from the inside out, like the girl's study is going to be talking about. Power to restore, power to forgive, power to take the wretched, broken people like us and not simply give us a bath so we can look good on the outside, but to change us from the inside out. We met a Jesus who doesn't really care how broken and sinful we are because he has power over sin, so he can take us wherever we're at, he can start over, and he can make us new. Alright, so all of those points have already been made. We've already seen that he's compassionate. We've seen that he's loving. We've seen that he has power. We've seen that he loves all different sorts of people. We've seen all of that already. So what more does he have to prove? Everything has already been established. So Matthew isn't trying to make the same points that Luke's trying to make. Luke's still trying to establish Jesus' compassion. That he loves all sorts of people. That he loves very different kinds of people. Matthew isn't trying to make that point anymore, so he just has a couple of quick ideas that he wants to throw in there to convey one simple message through the story, and here it is. Jesus' power and authority is available, but it's only accessible by faith. If you read through this story, if you read through next week's story, that is the unifying theme. That is the idea that Jesus wants to pound, a desperate, humble faith. That Jesus' power and authority is available, but it's only accessible through faith. Look at verse 18 again, in the Matthew account. While Jesus was saying this, a ruler came and knelt before him and said, my daughter has just died. But come, put your hand on her, and she will live. Do you see the emphasis on his faith? Some people go through, they say, but he messed up the order. I mean, don't you realize that she wasn't dead, and then the woman came, and he's waiting, and then she died. Matthew doesn't care about that. He's just getting down to the gist of the story. You know what I want you to know? I just want you to know that at some point in that story, he came and his daughter was already dead, and he responded in faith. That's what I want to emphasize. All those other details, push those off to the side. Look at the woman, verse 21. She said to herself, if only I touch his cloak, I will be healed. I just know I'll be healed. I know that he can heal me. I know that he can restore me. Then Jesus turned and saw her. No drama, no details, no who touched me, no finding her. Just a simple statement of faith. Jesus turned and saw her. Take heart, daughter, he said. Your faith has healed you. And the woman was healed from that moment on. Next week we'll meet a couple of blind men. And just like Jairus and this woman, we will see them initiate with Jesus in a desperate, humble faith. Because that is the point that Jesus is trying to drive home in the story. We see in these stories the absolute necessity of faith. That is what he's driving at. Not knowledge, but faith. Not belief, but faith. It says God wants to move in your life, and he wants to move through faith. And I have no idea what that's going to look like in your life. We come to these healing stories, and one of the big questions is does God want to heal me? Is God going to heal me? Does God want to heal you? Ultimately, yes. I promise you, when you are face-to-face with Jesus, you place your faith in Jesus, when you come face-to-face with him, he will restore your body. Alright? But I cannot promise you, if you have cancer, if you have chronic back pain, whatever you have, that it is God's will for you today to be restored. Some people say, but if you have faith, then you're going to be restored. Maybe. I don't think the text is teaching that. Do you think that this woman who had been sick for 12 years, she came up with faith that day, but the previous 12 years she didn't have faith? Maybe. Or maybe she was faithfully following Jesus for 12 years. And by his grace, for his purposes, she was suffering. And her life was hard. And it was refining her character, and it was pushing it on her, and it was transforming her into the woman that he wanted her to be. Because more than Jesus cares about our physical healing, he cares about our hearts. He cares about winning our hearts. And frankly, sometimes it's a lot easier to win the heart of somebody who is suffering than somebody who is independent, has it all together, and has everything that they need. So I don't know whether God wants to heal you. I know that God is able to heal you. And I know that God chooses to move in our lives in response to a desperate, humble faith. I know that God doesn't choose to move in our lives in response to religion or doing better or trying harder or trying to get it all together. He doesn't say, man, you got up early and read your Bible this morning. You know what? You got a little bit of Christian karma. All right? And I'm going to pay that back to you. That's not how it works. That's religion. That's not Christianity. What we see in Christianity is that we are saved by grace through faith. And that God works in our life by grace through faith, unearned. Because we place our faith in him, because we rely on him, because we fall on our face desperate before him, and he chooses to move. So the first question that I have for you is really simple. Have you placed your faith in Jesus? Have you come before Jesus desperate and humble? Have you come to him in response to the gospel? Not with your pride, looking at your resume and saying, you know what, I got it together. I've been in church all of my life. I have read my Bible. I can quote the books of the New Testament. I give. I serve. Have you come to Jesus not with your resume, not saying, obviously I'm a part of your kingdom, welcome me in. But have you come to Jesus desperate? Just as desperate as this woman, as this man whose daughter was dying, or this woman who was outcast. Because that's where we're in the story. We're not the Jesus hero of the story. We are the outcast woman in the story. We are the dead daughter in the story. All right, we're the person in the story who is absolutely desperate, who is dead, who brings nothing to the table, and who needs Jesus. The person who needs to fall at the feet of Jesus and say, accept me, take me, forgive me. You told me a couple of weeks ago, Jesus, that you have power over sin. Use your power over sin in my life. Because I hear the gospel and I look at my life and I say, you know what? I'm better than that guy. I've got it more together than that guy. I do some good things. I help some good people. But the more I understand your message, the more I understand who you are and what you call me to, the more I see that I need you. And that I'm broken and that I'm sinful and I desperately need your forgiveness. Have you placed your faith in Jesus? And by that, I'm not asking, do you believe in Jesus? I don't care if you believe in Jesus. Believing in Jesus is better than not believing in Jesus. But believing in Jesus is not the same as placing your faith in Jesus. It's not enough to believe in Jesus. It's not enough to believe in God. James 2:19, it says this. He's making fun of people. He's mocking people who say, we believe, but it hasn't changed our life. Here's what he says. He says, you believe that there's one God. Good. Even the demons believe that and shudder. But has your faith changed your life? Not have you signed off on the doctrinal statement, not do you believe in him, do you have genuine faith? Because genuine faith always changes our lives. How do I know if I have genuine faith? Or if I simply believe in Jesus? Look at your life. Better yet, ask somebody else who's following Christ well to look at your life and be honest with you. When you look at my life, do you think that I have faith? Has my life been changed by my faith in Jesus Christ? And Mosaic, we don't want to ask if you're a good person. We prefer good people to bad people in the long term. Walking off the street, good, bad, whatever. We don't put a lot of stock in whether you're a good person. Most Mormons that I know are good people. My wife, she worked at a restaurant in Dallas while I was in seminary. A lot of Christians in Dallas. And like any part of the region, Christians are known to be horrible tippers. They're known to be kind of demanding, mean-spirited people who are like, you didn't fill my water glass, you don't get a tip. All right? No wait staff wants to work on Sunday afternoon because they believe Christians are the worst. But Jess was wonderful when she was working as a wait staff. So both her co-workers and her clients mistook her for a Mormon. She was just such a nice person. Mormons are nice people. Muslims are nice people. Christians hopefully are nice people. But you don't become a Christian by becoming a nice person. You become a Christian through desperate, humble faith, by falling at the feet of Jesus and asking him to redeem you. How do I know if I have genuine faith? Ask yourself a question. Has the gospel captured my heart? Has the gospel captivated my mind? Has Jesus captivated my mind? At Mosaic, we talk about multiplying passionate pursuers of Jesus Christ who engage the world with his love. That's our mission. Is Jesus the passion of your heart? Is Jesus who you love? Because if I have placed my faith in Jesus, if I believe all of who Jesus is, then that should capture me. That's amazing. It should change me. It should change my passions and affections. Joshua Harris explains it this way. Your passion is what you talk about, think about, and dream about. It's what you give your time to without complaint. It's what you find your identity in. It's what you're willing to sacrifice for. Is that how you relate to Jesus? Are you a worshiper of Jesus? Now there's a danger here where you can say, well, I'm not really that, so you know what I'm going to do? The next time you put out one of those guilt-ridden invitations to serve in the children's ministry and change diapers, I'm going to say yes, because I really want to be a Christian. All right? You can't change from the outside in, you change from the inside out. If you look at your life and say, you know what, I don't have much passion for Jesus, I don't have much passion for his mission, I don't have much passion for any of this stuff, you might want to question whether you're a Christian, but you don't change that by changing your behavior. You change that by going to Jesus, by looking at what he's done, by reflecting on the gospel until it sinks in and it transforms you from the inside out. If you are a worshiper of Jesus, you say, man, I've been worshiping Jesus for all my life, and yet the dots don't all connect, but I know that I'm in. Are you inviting him to continue to cultivate a desperate, humble faith in your life? All right? Do you want a desperate, humble faith, or do you want comfort and security and just have all your ducks in a row? Because if I look at my life, I have to confess that, generally speaking, I have a preference for control. I have a preference to have things that I can look at, that I can touch, that I can count on, that I know to move forward. All right? When I think about the church, I want to know, oh yeah, we're making budget, this is easy, it's all set. And if there's a budget deficit, I would love to know, okay, this person's going to make up the budget deficit. All right, when it comes to winning people to Christ, making disciples, all of these things, I want to have plans and strategies and things that I can manufacture so that I can control it. But what I see time and time again is that God looks at my plans and my strategies and the things that I want to control, and he slaps me in the face and says, you know what? If you don't stop relying on this stuff, I'm going to take away even more of the stuff that you're trusting in. Because I'm not ultimately going to build a church through skill or strategy or money or time or anything like that. What I'm going to build a church through is desperate, humble faith. And I want to cultivate a body of worshipers with desperate, humble faith, who come to Jesus and say, Jesus, I need you. I can't do this on my own. I can't be a good person on my own. No, I can look good on the outside. I can look good on Sunday morning. I can impress the person sitting next to me. But in the quietness of my heart, in the darkness of the night, there are things going on in my heart that I need Jesus to change. Do we come to him with a desperate, humble faith? My prayer for us is that we would, that this would characterize our lives. Let's pray. I'm going to invite the band to come and close in worship. God, I know the wickedness in my heart, that I want a life where I can depend on me, where I don't need you, where I can just go about my day in the security of my bank account, the security of my intellect, the security of just having it together. But God, I just thank you that you continue to pursue my heart, that you continue to break me. And Lord, I pray that that would be true of the people in our bodies, that you would break us, that you would help us to see in ourselves not the synagogue ruler that has it together, but the desperate outcast woman that needs Jesus. God, I pray that we would respond. Lord, I pray for those who need to wrestle with this and need to talk through it, that they would come talk to me, talk to others, that we wouldn't walk out of this room unchanged, that we wouldn't just listen to your word and hear your word and so deceive ourselves, but we would do what it says, that we would respond in faith. Amen.